Like for me, Star Wars is more than just a movie with shooting and like space ninjas, whatever. Like for me, it's more significant. It has more meaning to it. So when I had the chance to work on a Star Wars film, I was like, honestly, I couldn't really believe it. I was like, man, I'm working in my childhood dream. Like, what the hell is this? I am Hernan Orozco. I come from Mexico. Been living here for almost 5 years. I'm a lighting artist. I work in the visual effects industry. Like some of my hobbies, I like to do some biking, skiing. I like football, but football for me, since I come from Mexico, is soccer. I like video games. I play a lot of video games, board games. Yeah, that kind of stuff. That's like a brief summary of who I am. When I tell people what I do for a living, it's like I put 3D lights into objects for movies and series. They're like, oh, so you just put 1 or 2 lights and that's it? It's not as easy as that. When you're working on a movie, even if it's like in real life set or in a digital production, there's so many things that need to come in for you. Like there's people animating stuff, there's people doing the effects and instructions for other things, or making extensions of sets of trees and backgrounds and whatever. What I do specifically in lighting, we receive a lot of packages from different departments and we have to integrate them to make them feel really like realistic, so we see them, and like when you're watching a movie you feel like they're actually there in real life. So it's not only lighting, it's integrating elements, and sometimes I would say, like, once you have the lighting fixed, I would say 80% of my job is troubleshooting stuff. Why is this thing not working? Why is this thing broken? Why is that not going through? Or if a render is really long on the render farm, we need to figure out why. How can we make it less expensive in the farm? So yeah, like, it's not just putting 1 and 2 lights and that's it. It's much more than that, and there's a lot of things that you can do creatively to get things sitting well, creating new shadows or reflections to make stuff more interesting visually. I graduated in 2015 in Mexico, and funny because I wanted to study architecture before, but then I went to university, the one I studied. I think it was around the time Avatar came out, so I watched it and I was blown away by the movie. And then I went to the architecture talk and I was like, I love architecture. I like to design spaces and shit. And then I went to the talk of a bachelor's of animation and digital arts, which is the one I studied. When I went to the talk over there, I spoke with the director of that major, and he convinced me to switch to visual effects, because you can basically do the same. You can create design spaces, but instead of real life, you would do it in 3D. And that idea really blew me away, and I chose to do that. So I studied there, and after graduating, I was working a little bit in Mexico. And after like a year and a half, I think, of working there, I got a chance to come here in a program that it was meant for new people in the industry to develop and grow their skills. I was 24. I had nothing to lose. I had, let this go. And since then, I met a lot of people. I was blown away by, in Canada you have a lot of people from everywhere in the world, and in Mexico is usually mostly Mexicans. You might meet some other people from other places, but it's mainly Mexicans. And here you meet everyone, like from everywhere, and I love that. I like that. So that's why I came, and since then I've never, I have stayed here. Then I went to Montreal for some time, and then I came back. I always liked movies, video games, and stuff like that. So to have the chance to work on those things, those projects, was always a dream. So yeah, I was just lucky enough to get the chance to actually do it. I've always been a fan of Star Wars since I was a kid. I played with my dad's toys. He loved Star Wars. He had all of his toys. When I was born and I was growing up, he gave me his old toys and I played with them. Then I got my own, and then when I grew up, I passed my toys and my father's toys to my younger brother. So yeah, it has been my favorite film. I guess Star Wars for me means that you can push yourself and outgrow yourself and become someone else, and like if you put a lot of effort to it. Like for me, Star Wars is more than just a movie with shooting and like space ninjas, whatever. Like for me, it's more significant. It has more meaning to it. So when I had the chance to work on a Star Wars film, I was like, honestly, I couldn't really believe it. I was like, man, I'm working in my childhood dream. Like, what the hell is this? Like, it was every day I was in meetings, every day I was talking with someone about a problem that I was having with a character. It was unreal. Like, I honestly, I still can't like fully comprehend what I am actually doing, which is great, and it keeps me humble, I guess, to just kind of like, appreciate the things that I'm doing. But like, what I can share is that, the people working in those kinds of projects are legendary, to say the least. I got to work with some people that have been in the industry for years and years and years, like, and then being able to sit with them virtually, at least, in meetings and see them was unreal. Like, I was like, man, what the hell is this? Is this happening? I was like shaking of, excitement and nervousness. The first time I was gonna speak in public to present some of my work in a meeting, I was so nervous, man. I was like, I'm gonna show my stuff to industry legends. I was so nervous. But after some days, a few weeks, in the end, we're all just people. Yeah, like, some people are really high in the industry and they're legends and they're super good at what they do. In the end, we're all just people, and we all started somewhere. And they're all really nice. I like how no one is like elevated above anyone else, They're super chill, they're super nice, and they're like there to help you. And I love that like work environment and the vibe they give you. It feels you welcoming and comfortable. And I felt safe, I could say, It's okay if I did some mistakes, because you always do, we're not perfect. But yeah, like, honestly, it was like a dream come true. And if I can get to work in another Star Wars project, I'll be happy. But I don't know, let's see what happens, yeah. Usually, the industry standard for lighting would be like a 3-point lighting, which is kind of like what we have right now. Right now, we're gonna use these lights that we have. So this is like a default lighting, and then maybe you want to make it look more like epic. We could do like some lighting from the sides, and we get some more details, like using the surfaces of his ears and eyebrows. We can get more contrast. I don't know how camera looks, but if I do this, we would see more detail here to create more contrast. And then things like this are like more like an epic kind of details, in which you see a lot of shadows in the face. If you want to see some spooky lighting, you would do something like this. We Mexicans, I see this generally, any Mexican I know, we are very, very hard workers. And since we are very close to the United States, we have this strong culture about learning English. And not everyone in Mexico speak English, but at least they would, be able to understand or even read it. Like, since we're so close from the US, it's very common to compare ourselves to the US. So we kind of try to mimic a lot of things they do to make our country better. When you put yourself in another culture and you study in a different language, it kind of opens up, ways of looking at things. And I see that a lot in my friends. All of the friends that I have that are really, really hardworking, we really like to overcome ourselves and kind of grow, But yeah, hardworking culture. And that's my dad is really hardworking. He put all of us through school, and that's one of the things that I took from him. Just work, and look out after yourself. And if you need something, work for it. And then here, I find Canada as a very independent country in the way of people overall very independent. And I would guess Mexico is very family-based. We do everything with family. And here, I'm not saying it's not like that here. I'm not saying that. But I have noticed that maybe people are very like one-man army here, which is nice because it kind of like, kind of gives you the opportunity to do whatever you want by yourself, because the quality of life is great. Salaries are good, overall, the transit is great. You can do whatever you want here if you're by yourself. And I like that about Canada. It's great. It's very welcoming. There's a lot of cultures, a lot of languages, and I love languages. I love meeting people from different places. In Mexico, it's mainly Mexicans, and here you meet everyone from everywhere, and I love that. I'm a big fan of history and culture, When I had chance to go I went to Dublin, and then Italy, and then finally France. It's awesome to realize when you were standing there, it's like you feel in a really old town that's been there for centuries. You feel like even it smells like old. And I was like, wow, this is so authentic. I had chills now remembering that. It was amazing. I guess for any European person would be like something normal for them, but for me, I live in Mexico, really far from Europe. So when I had the chance to visit there, it was so meaningful to me. I was taking pictures every day, One of my favorite games is Assassin's Creed. So, in those games, you're actually in Rome, Florence, or, Venice. And I was there in those towns myself. So I was like, man, I remember I killed a guy right here. And I was jumping from that roof. And, it was fun. It was amazing. I had a great time. And I will always remember that trip. It was very meaningful to me for many reasons. Something I remember and I will always remember is when I was in Montreal. Since I'm in Canada, I always lived alone. And I had this very good friend. He was one of the first persons that reached out to me when I went to that school. I knew no one, and he reached out to me, and we became very good friends. So when I was in Montreal, I remember using Instagram, and I posted a story. You can do like questionnaires, and you can click on stuff. And I think I did one that was saying like, I was having a beer by myself, and I posted a picture of my beer saying, click if you want to cheer with me. Like cheers. And then I take a drink. And this friend, which I hadn't spoke with for a really long time, he clicked cheers. And I said to myself, oh man, I should reach out to this guy. It's been a long time, I miss him. And I didn't reach out because I was doing something. And then the next week I found out that he had an accident and he passed out, sadly. And it was a pandemic, it was very tough. So yeah, this memory is very meaningful as well and one day I was feeling very down, honestly. I was like, man, I miss my friend. I didn't reach out to him. He actually reached out to me indirectly, clicking a fucking, Instagram post, but he did. And I hated myself, man, why didn't I say something? Now I'm not gonna be able to do it. I was feeling very down, and then I was like, screw it. I'm gonna go out for a run and I'm gonna clear my head. And when I finished the run, I felt very empowered because it was not only that my friend died, also it was a pandemic, and I could lose my job at the time because it was very uncertain what was going to happen. At the time I wasn't a permanent resident, so I was depending on a working visa. So I was like, I don't know what's going to happen with my life. It was so tough. And after that run, it made me feel better. And after that run, I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. When I started running, this one is the first half marathon I did in Montreal. And then this one I just did this May in 2022. It's a full marathon that I did. It was my first time running a marathon. And it was one of the toughest experiences in my life because I was hurting so bad. I was so tired. I had cramps all over my legs. Yeah, it was a tough experience, but I was really happy when I finished it because it's one of those things that when you finish, you're like, man, I did it, I made it, and that only inspired me more to do more stuff afterwards. So I want to do more races and maybe triathlons, I don't know. But yeah, running is kind of my comfort zone where I go out, clear my head, and spend time with myself, listening to some music, and distract from my daily routine. And running is kind of my favorite hobby at the moment, I would say. Yeah.
I don't know, this is my fault, just go grateful. This is West Coast, okay, we just ballin' like an OVO. You can see me on the television, cause my target is telling. I don't know, screw it over. I don't wanna screw it over. Just wanna drive my Range Rover. If you gotta know, gotta be rich as you. So you gotta know, I gotta cash out. This my freestyle. Oh, I say like it. I kinda like it. I'm so hesitant, but I don't wanna lose enough. Okay, don't give up. I don't wanna do the top, but I don't wanna be the bottom as well. So this is my life, okay? These R&B tight, I don't wanna do the labor. I'm kinda suck at it, but I do it over, okay? I can finish, I trust myself, just like Hernan. You gotta know, I'm thinking of Hernan. Hernan is my girlfriend's man. Her name is Camila. I don't know, maybe Okay, let's change the topic. I don't wanna listen to me. Okay, this is kinda like a weird thing, but it's so amazing. Your story is so amazing, so impressive. I can't get off my mind. You gotta know you're gonna be the Superman, just like a Star Wars. Okay, let's do your story. I can be the worst. You gotta know. Let's live it in the moment. It's like it's happening. Okay, I don't wanna this kind of thing, but I don't think I can be the worst one. But you gotta know, I don't wanna stop this time. It's like a marathon, running, jogging. I don't wanna joking. Okay, join me. You gonna feel so coffee. We gonna out of my comfort zone. You gotta know this song is for you, Hernan. You gotta know. Okay, just go with flow. It's like a pop smoke, maybe not pop smoke, cause I don't wanna fucking my password to the universe, cause this is my passport. Okay, here you are. We got no cash, but we have fun here. Okay. Alright.